The Typhoon 2 is the second battleship that has the potential to run the story missions quite easily and quite safely. The Typhoon 2 has the best possible damage application out of any other missile ship. It has better damage application than the Barghest. However, the Typhoon 2 has a little bit less alpha damage, a little bit less overall paper DPS, and most importantly, the Typhoon 2 is one of the fastest battleships in the game. So you can easily orbit around the mission outside of the warping range at about 150 or 200 kilometers, depends on the build that you have on your ship. Here you can take a look at the ship trait description, now at the attributes and fitting. Overall a pretty solid ship. The Typhoon 2 can be a shield or armor tank or a speed tank, depends on the build that you run on this ship. Now on to my build. Now for any other mission, any other encounter, you can easily run the large rapid missiles. I actually prefer the Typhoon 2 with the rapid missiles because of its amazing damage application. It has a decent range of 58.04 kilometers. Now the rigs on this ship are the same as on the Barghest. I focused on maximum possible DPS alongside with maximum possible damage application, and honestly, if you have the ISK, then a build like this will work just fine. Now let me open the implant window. The implant is the same as on the Barghest. It is the warhead charge, one of the most fun to use implants in the game. And in the new patch it was actually buffed, so the implant will be a little bit more powerful than before and your ship will perform a bit better than before. The general units are about the same. I haven't changed them because both setup runs well for the Barghest and for the Typhoon. And now let me open up the window again, the fitting window again. 2,200 DPS with this current setup. Dual ballistic controls, one capacitor battery, one adaptive and one large shield booster. One neutralizer, one Osferatu, one web and one scrambler, although you can easily run dual neutralizers as defense against smaller ships, mostly against pirates. The range on the large missiles is also pretty good and it can reach up to 157 kilometers, which can be improved if you like to use the missile guidance computers. Of course, if you combine them with the general unit for a range, you can get up to 350 kilometer range with ease, and you can easily manually orbit around the mission at 300 plus kilometers, and then you are never going to be tackled by any pirate that is lurking around in low sec. Now let me show you the ship's speed and let me show you the other active stats. Now I said that the ship has a little bit lower DPS than the Barghest, which is fine, but the Typhoon 2 has the best possible damage application out of any other battleship that uses missiles, of course. So that's one very important aspect of the ship. You can easily take out smaller ships with the large cruise missiles, something that the spacepan will have a problem with because it cannot apply that damage well to the small targets. Okay, now let's take a look at the active stats. The tank will be, well, of course not the best because this is a DPS build, but it's okay. 2.2 km per second is the current micro warp drive speed. It can be improved up to 2.5 to 3000 meters per second with the right build. 156 km is the missile range, which should be more than enough to be orbiting safely outside of the range of most interstellars that warp in. 2.7 thousand DPS, 3.3 thousand DPS, and with the second ballistic control 4014.84 VPS, which is a little bit lower than the DPS on the Barghest. 203 km is the range with the sniper mode, and that is obviously pretty good. You can easily run the sniper mode as your primary missile mode on the implant for maximum possible range. And here you can take a look at the explosion radius 96.46 with the precision mode. Again, pretty good stuff, and I'm very happy with the current result on this ship. Again, the Typhoon 2 is one of the most dangerous to tackle ships. If they don't like your cruiser will be dead. That's from my personal experience. I almost got yeeted off grid against one Typhoon 2 that used around the same build as this one. Although with a big difference, they used a lot of the guidance computers, missile guidance computers, and that did yeet my Ortus quite well. So we will run the Bad Hair Day storyline today. And well, not really the best mission to do with this ship, but I'm quite confident that I can pull it off. No, I say not the best because the Caldera missions use guidance disruptors, so if they do get close they might affect my missile launchers. However, I'm not really that worried about that. Now I accidentally warped at 0 because I forgot that I'm doing a storyline mission, and well, now I'm burning outside. Now I'm burning as quickly as possible to go to the optimal orbiting range. Now this thing is fast, so you don't have to worry about those ships catching up to you. Even if you mess up with the warping, you can easily turn around and burn away. After all, the Typhoon 2 is ridiculously fast. This is not the fastest Typhoon 2, by the way. You can make this thing go a lot faster if you like. But 2.2 kilometers per second for a battleship, it's okay, it's more than enough. Already faster than the Macariel. It's not as fast as the Nestor, but you know, it's still not slow, it's quite speedy. And I'm already at the optimal range. Now the same rule applies to this ship as with any other battleship. Position yourself so that there is no direct warping on your ship, and orbit in a way that a double warp trick is not going to work. The double warp trick is when the PvP scanner scans your ship twice and then they warp to the mission and then they warp to your ship directly. This a second time, and you don't want to be a very easy target. So manually always orbit outside of any warping position, and that seems to be working quite well for me. Now, most pirates don't expect your ship to be above the mission, above the grid, so you can easily go there as well. Although there is no up or down in space, but let's pretend that there is up and down for a second, so it will be easier to understand what I'm talking. So you go above the mission beacon, and usually in most systems you will find that there is no objects that can give a good warping to your ship from that position, or below, depends on the mission and on the situation. But most forget that that this is a 3D space, and most go either left or right, but not up or down. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now I use the micro-obrief occasionally. I don't run the micro-obrief constantly. However, I recommend you that you run the micro-obrief constantly. That way your ship is a much more difficult target, and no cloaky tackle is going to have a chance to approach you. If something fast warps at 0 to tackle you, you have enough time to turn around and warp to a gate or station. Now I usually don't recommend that you take the aggro, because then you are going to be vulnerable for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes if you kill the target. And if the target has backup, then they can easily hunt you down. So the best option would be to just warp away if the target becomes red. If they already tackle first, then you can open fire. then you have the weapon timer, and you don't have to worry about any criminal timers that you might get from engaging a player. But just warping out is already more than enough. Now,
Enemy ships detected.
you can be aligned from your position towards
We're
a
under
station
attack.
or gate. Of course, not from the direct warping from the gate, but from your
We're
position
under
where there
attack.
is no good warping, you can easily align yourself towards any other object that you like. Now, I don't usually go and align to planets or other celestial objects, because then you can get chased down and you can get tackled at the location. The safest option is to warp to a gate or station. That way, if the pirate warps in and if they are red, if they have a criminal timer, then they are going to be destroyed by the gate guns, and then you can return back to your mission and continue where you left off. That's the trick that you can do with the fast battleships. Now, why do I mention this? Well, most battleships that I have destroyed, they don't do that. They basically just sit in the mission, they don't do anything, they just sit there, and they're basically a big, easy target.
Enemy ships detected.
Which is, not the best thing to be, especially if you're flying a expensive
We're under
battleship.
attack.
Not all battleships can do missions safely. For example, the Balgorn, it's not really a ship that's built for missions, and I would not use a Balgorn for missions, at least in low sec. It can be used in high sec for high sec islands really well. It can be used in null sec for null sec anomalies really well, where you have the alliance or corporation as backup. However, in low sec for storyline missions, I would not be using a Balgorn. It's a big juicy target and mostly relies on close range. It's very easy to get swarmed, very easy to get tackled, and it's very easy to lose a Balgorn. Now, a Macarial, I see the Macarial as, potentially being good as well, but the issue with the Macarial is that the artillery guns have a very long cycle time, and I don't like the range on that. It's not as good as on the missiles. And the autocan Macarial is also just an easy target, just like the Balgorn. Very easy to get tackled and very easy to lose the ship. And not to mention the Macarial basically has no tank, which is a big issue in the survivability aspect. Vindicator is also not a very good ship for storyline missions because it relies on very close range. Blasters have the worst range. However, the Vindicator can have a good tank and it can have solid DPS, but unfortunately, one targeting disruptor or one tracking disruptor, and you can hit the pirate back, and it's very easy to get swarmed because the Vindicator is not the fastest battleship. And well, the first part of the mission has been completed. The second part is
Autopilot engaged.
I believe I have to scan something. I'm about to find out in a couple jumps. But so far, the missile battleships seem to be the best option
Warp drive active.
for storylines. And surprisingly, the Barghest has the potential to be one of the best ships for the job. Now, of course,
Autopilot
if
engaged.
you like to use them in low sec, well, you can use them, but just be aware that just be aware that they are very easy ships to lose, very expensive ships and very good targets, and pirates love to shoot them down. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if you like to use the other close-range brawler faction battleships in storyline
We're
missions.
under attack.
I would still say that cruisers and frigates are the best option. Even battlecruisers can be used in storyline missions very well because of their maneuverability and their speed. With those little ships, you don't worry about how fast you can clear the mission. You will clear the mission, and you will clear the mission in a decent, I guess, safety, because those ships are much more difficult to tackle. Now, tackling these things that orbit at very long range is also pretty difficult. That's why I like to use them for this job, and that's why I like to show the ships that work really well. Technically, you can also use the Raven Striker in this in such a way, but the Raven Striker is just much slower, and its siege mode is not that good. So I would be using it without the siege mode. Would be a bit slower, but technically you can easily do the same thing as I do with the Barghest or Typhoon 2. The Raven Striker would have much higher DPS than the Typhoon.
Enemy ships detected. We're under attack.
Now this is the second part of the mission. I believe the mission only has two
We're
parts.
under attack.
And I believe this is the highest paying tier 10 mission. Now, this is a Caldari storyline, and I almost forgot to mention that Caldari storylines are a bit more difficult to run because in Caldari space you will encounter a bit more pirates. The most pirates will be located in Galente space. Well, that's basically my space, I guess, but yeah, we all know that. And the least number of pirates are surprisingly in Angel space, in Minmatar space. Back on the live server when I was running a mission for fun, I went in deep lowsec and there was no one there, and I was able to run the 20-30 million ISK missions undisturbed. I did that just as an experiment to see the traffic, and I was surprised. There was no one there. It was pretty chill. So I guess the Minmatar storylines might be the easiest ones to run if we consider the fact if we're looking at the pirate population of that region.
Enemy ships detected.
This is wave 3 out of 5. Now it did take me about, I don't know,
We're under
about
attack.
less than an hour to complete the whole thing. But the video would be too long if I include everything, so I did cut some parts here and there just to make it a little bit shorter. But so far I am quite satisfied with the Typhoon 2's performance. It does really well. Now, against these ships, you can use the EM and kinetic missile if you like. EM because it will do most damage on that damage type, and kinetic for armor and hull, that's where they have basically no resistance. But I use explosive and thermal. Thermal for shields, explosive for armors and hulls, and you can see that thermal does a lot of damage on the shield compared to explosive. Explosive does a lot more damage on armor and hull than thermal, so it's very good to know the resistances on your target ships in order to maximize the clear time that you have. Against small ships, I just stick with explosive because that's more than enough to wipe them out. So far, the Typhoon 2 it's doing the job really well. I can definitely feel the lower DPS and lower alpha damage, but again, it's not really comparable because not the same enemies, but the difference can be felt between the two ships.
Enemy ships detected.
Okay, next wave has spawned
We're
in.
under attack.
Now the rule is of course the same. With every new wave, try to focus down the smaller ships first. The smaller ships are your primary target, then the cruisers and battlecruisers, and at the end the battleships. That's how I usually do it, that's the safe way to do it, and no issues on my end so far. Everything works just the way that I want it to work. Now I'm thinking, did I miss one battleship, one faction battleship? I think I missed one. But most of the faction battleships can easily be used in nullsec and highsec, but I would not be really using them for low-sec storylines, just because of the danger of how many pirates are lurking around and how easy it is to lose these ships. Faction cruisers, any faction cruiser is going to run this really well. I believe I will be running one more storyline with the Ortus, I believe. Either with the Ortus or with one of the other faction cruisers, just to show you how easy it is to run the storylines with the faction cruisers, and I think the Ortus is going to be a very good ship for that job because it's fast, and overall the Ortus has battleship level DPS. So I think it will be very interesting to see how a Ortus clears a tier 10 storyline. I mean, the Ortus is also quite pricey, but its price did go down with time, so it's not really a big problem, I believe. It's still cheaper than a faction battleship, that's for sure. And well, the last wave, 5 out of 5, has spawned. It has 29 ships. No, 31 ships, okay.
We're under attack.
2 ships more than the previous storyline, and of course, let me focus down the small ships
We're
first.
under attack.
Small ships get the primary target status, and then the medium ones, and after the medium ones, the big ones. And again, you should maintain the manual orbit throughout the waves. Always maintain a safe position so that nothing can approach you, so that nothing can tackle you. Always be aligned and always watch local. If something suspicious is happening, warp out. The most critical part is when the new wave spawns. That's basically the most dangerous part, because usually pirates like to move in when the new wave spawns and when the player is distracted by the other ships in the mission. So I recommend that you open the overview window up and that you pay close attention to what's happening on the PvP overview. If you notice a flash or something weird happening or occurring around you, that means that something cloaky has warped in. Not many players know this, but when a cloaky ship warps in, you still see the warp flash, although not as obvious as when the ship is decloaked, but the warp flash is still there. So when you see something flash and you wonder, did did something just flash? Something probably did. A cloaky ship that warped in. And you can even kind of notice the location from which they have warped in. So you have basically enough time to move away from the mission if that happens. Or you can stay and keep on running the mission and keep on orbiting, because if you keep orbiting you should be good, should be safe. There is no way that they can do the double warp trick and catch your ship, mostly because you will be moving, and when they warp to your previous location you will already be 100 plus kilometers away from them, and they cannot warp to you at that moment because they have to double scan you. But by the time they double scan you and warp in, you already moved to the next 200 kilometer mark, and that way you cannot be tackled by anything. If someone tries to throw a interceptor on you, you have enough time to simply warp out, so that's also not a big problem. There is honestly so many options, and currently the orbiting tactic, the manual orbit, is the best option that you can go for because of the amount of safety that it can offer. And these are the last 3 ships on the mission. Now, what do I prefer, the Barghest or the Typhoon 2? A very, very tricky and difficult question, because both ships are good. In some ways, the Typhoon 2 is actually a lot safer because it's just a normal battleship, and it's not going to attract a whole alliance to try and kill you, unless you are me and unless you have my character name in local. Then yeah, no matter what ship you fly, there is always going to be a massive fleet after you. But the jokes aside, the Barghest is indeed a very juicy target, and I know from my experience, when we found the Barghest, everyone logs in, everyone wants a piece of that ship. So that can be basically applied to any other Barghest out there. It's a very expensive ship, it's a very bling ship, everyone wants to kill it. So if you're flying one, then be very careful. If something is suspicious, it probably is suspicious. And be very, very careful with that expensive ship, because it indeed is a very juicy target. Now with the Typhoon 2, it's a whole different story again. It's mostly because this ship is not as expensive as the Barghest. However, the clear time and the performance is actually quite similar. It's there. It's definitely quite similar. The Barghest has much more DPS and alpha damage, while the Typhoon 2 has much better damage application. So it depends on which one of these things you prefer. If you like extra damage, then I believe the Barghest might be the ship for you. If you like the extra damage application, then the Typhoon 2 is the ship for you. But in the end, no matter what ship you pick, no matter what ship you fly, they will be running the same. They will be basically delivering about the same performance, and they're both very good ships. I have fun with both of them, and definitely
Warp drive active.
very fun to fly ships. Now the Typhoon 2 is a bit cheaper, so I guess easier on the wallet and things like that, but definitely both are very fun ships. Alright, well, time to dock, I guess. The mission has been completed. It went as expected, quite smoothly, without a problem. Very happy with the result, and everything went just as planned. So I really hope that I could help you with the build for the Typhoon
Docking
2.
request accepted.
Also, most importantly, I hope that I could help with the orbiting tactics. I think that's the most important part of this video, because it actually shows you how you can easily avoid all the pirates, how you can easily avoid any cloaky tackle and ships like that. So with that being said, hope that you enjoyed. If you want to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.